What is the new pipeline for Tennessee football recruiting? Is it White Station High School? Could it be Dobbins-Bennett again? How about Maryville? They win all the time. Red Bank. I don't know. Huntington. It would be fun to find out, I guess, what high school has produced the most talent to Tennessee over the years. It's got to be someone in state. I mean, but is it Knox Catholic? Well, not anymore because Cade Mays ain't going there. But, is it Bearden? Is it Knox Bearden? Where wasn't a football player. Phil Garner went to Knox Bearden. Yeah. That's a funny thing. That's not a funny thing. It's a legitimate thing. Anyway. Now let me ask you this. Okay. How about Arizona Western Junior College? Don't knock that. Don't knock that. There is a new lineman coming from Arizona Western. I'm a little familiar with Arizona Western because I used to be in Yuma, which is where it is. And I used to be really critical of the area as a sports area. However, I'm going to tell you this. The one place that I found that I thought was a worse sports area than this area was Yuma. Because they only had 2 sports writers, 1 sportscaster, no sports talk shows, and there really wasn't anything but 6 high schools in a town of 90,000 people, except there was Arizona Western Junior College, the Matadors. So that was actually a big deal, and it's a town of almost 100,000 people, Yuma. Real nice in the wintertime. You want to go, getting out of this cold weather, I recommend Yuma. So, I recommend Yuma very much here for this. Anyway, the Tennessee Volunteers, though, they landed a star tight end from Arizona Western. Now they're getting a pretty good tackle. Remember, undeniable sports truth of Marky, Billson, number 1. You can always find another tackle. Well, here's an example. Jameer Johnson is his name. He's a 4-star tackle, whatever that means. Anyway, he is from Arizona Western, but he'll be playing for Tennessee for the next 2 years on a team that at the end of the year was down to walk-on linemen. So no Cade Mays, but you can always find another lineman. And in this case, it is Jameer Johnson. Now, he's the number 2 ranked offensive tackle, we understand. He picked the Vols over Southern California, which makes me wonder what the Southern California tackle situation is right now. Also picked him over Missouri. I think that's big because Missouri and Tennessee are more alike in the pecking order of the SEC. I can make an argument Missouri is ahead. Look, they've won 4 out of 6 games, including 50-17. They just pretty much fired Tennessee's coach last year. They've won 2 SEC East titles. Well, they don't have the pageantry at Missouri. They do have the distinction of being the only team in Missouri. Tennessee at least has to compete against Vanderbilt, Memphis, MTSU, who'll pick off a player here and there when they have, that usually hurts with depth because when they have a spot to play for a local Tennessean, the Tennessee might say, well, maybe you can beat out this guy. Well, then maybe you look at some other place. Or maybe you want to go to Nashville. Maybe you want Vanderbilt Academics, something like, maybe you want to play in Memphis. Don't ask me why, but maybe you do, You like blues music and ribs. Okay, there you go. Go to Memphis. That'd be fantastic. It's not a Power 5 team, but you get the point of what I'm trying to make. But picking Tennessee over Southern California, that is big. He is the number 4 junior college offensive tackle in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Interestingly enough, Johnson was not promised a starting position, but then again, you remember what the line was last year. Wouldn't you be surprised if he didn't? All right, it's an offensive lineman who's being recruited. Hopefully there won't be profanities going back and forth, but I'm just noticing this with Tennessee. Is Tennessee becoming the new Mississippi State? Which I know a lot of people will be offended by it, but I know I got to ask this. And I think it also shows just how down on the totem pole Tennessee has fallen. Hey, they were the worst team in the SEC last year. But maybe this is a way to quick fix a return to prominence. The JUCO players. Give you an example. Mississippi State, back in the day, and friend of the show, Jackie Sherrill. Jackie Sherrill recruited a lot of junior college players to Mississippi State. Dan Mullen would say to target some of the smaller high schools. Well, Sherrill liked the JUCO guys. And believe it or not, usually the Mississippi State academics are pretty good with the JUCO players. All right. Mississippi State also, remember 1998, every Tennessee fan does if he's of the era. Who do they play in the SEC West, or who do they play in the SEC championship game? Who are they trailing 14-10 midway through the fourth quarter to before T. Martin engineered a touchdown drive? That's right, Mississippi State. Did it with the JUCOs. Now, Mississippi State, they're hiring a coordinator from Penn State. Tennessee is hiring a coordinator from Alabama to be the head coach. Mississippi State, historically, JUCOs. Kansas State is another school that really would historically load up on the junior college talent. There are a lot of JUCOs in Kansas. My favorite is Dodge City Community College. It's where Larry Brown, former NFL MVP, actually played before he went to Kansas State. Anyway, the point being that Tennessee now with the JUCO, I don't remember them recruiting these many JUCOs in the past. It is a strategy that has worked at schools like Mississippi State and Kansas State. It's also an indication of how far Tennessee has fallen. But Kansas State was able, under Bill Snyder at least, perhaps not before, to win with the JUCOs. The only SEC West title Mississippi State ever won? Yep, with Jackie Sherrill's JUCOs. I don't know. Carl Torbush isn't going to like it. Matt Wilhelm telling us how great the strategy of not using JUCOs, although eventually TSU did sign a few, are, after the Buccaneers' 22nd loss in 33 games, on a post-game show might not agree, but I think that is a pretty good strategy right now for Tennessee. It might be lowering the standards of what they were in the past, but you can't worry about that. This is the now, okay? You can't be running the single wing because Bob Nealon did. You know, I mean, a lot of changes here. Again, it is a sign of how far Tennessee has fallen, but it's also a pretty proven method on how to get a quick fix, which is what the Vols need. Just ask Kennesaw State. I'm Marky Billson. I also want to look at the coordinators that are being brought in by Tennessee. I'm going to do that a little bit later on in the show. I also want to give you, it's now definite, usually at 1:30 on a Wednesday, the ball games you're going to see on TV, and there are two double headers, by the way, tomorrow, this Sunday on the NFL. And I usually am able to tell you what ball games you're going to see in the market will be. Now, I'm going to give you a preview, folks. You heard that preview, what with the cheesesteak eaters, telling you what they thought of the Dallas Cowboys, that sort of thing. The old Buddy Ryan quote from Tom Landry's last game. Remember that? Yeah, you keep listening to 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. You'll hear the promo. Put it together myself. I like it a lot. But guess what? Cowboys-Eagles aren't going to be shown locally on TV. I'll give you that hint. But you can hear the game here on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. And that's not about, I've done that before. I've had the radio on for the Cowboys, and while I'm watching, whatever game is on TV and all that, trying to focus in on two at one time. You're a real big football fan. You've done that. This is the opportunity. It's the last week of the season. It is kind of playoff week in a lot of respects. Now, something else on our 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities Facebook page. You will find out exactly what the playoff scenarios are if you go to our 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities Facebook page. We have them all laid out. We had them last week, too. You can see how the Carolina Panthers can still get a bye. I don't think they will, but it's theoretically possible. You can see how the Eagles clinched home field advantage. A lot of this is really simple. Home field advantage in the AFC. Patriots win, they get home field advantage. Steelers win, Patriots somehow lose to the Jets. I don't understand how they would do that. Steelers get the home field advantage. You can figure it out with a tie. I mean, basically, Patriots and Steelers are tied. Patriots, by virtue of their victory, have the tiebreaker. So the Steelers have to somehow finish with a better record. It's not that, not that complicated. In fact, most of the playoff scenarios this year are not that complicated. Titans win, they're in. They lose, they're still a way they can back in, but, that probably wouldn't be in the best interests of competition. I've spoke of this. Anyway, go check out the playoff seedings on our 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities Facebook page. I'll get along to them a little bit more later on in the show. I know it doesn't make really good radio. I mean, it's like reading off statistics and all that. It sort of goes in and out, But I've mentioned this, so stay tuned and I'll tell you what they are. I'll also be giving you what the football games you'll be watching will be later on in the show, as well as a breakdown of the ETSU Tusculum game. But speaking of the NFL, boy, James Harrison, that signing, that has been the big talk of the NFL. James Harrison, the man who, in my opinion, won the Super Bowl for the Steelers in 2008. You want to talk, I've often thought about this, biggest play in Steeler history. It's one of the glamour franchises. Everybody would say the Immaculate Reception, right? What about James Harrison's interception and touchdown return against the Cardinals in that Super Bowl? First of all, it's a Super Bowl, not a playoff game. Tremendously improbable. Took him a year and a half to run down the sideline, but it was great to watch. It's about as improbable that run as Franco Harris's was. Turned the game around. Cardinals were about ready to take the lead. Said the Steelers had a 10-point lead in the halftime. They got beat in the second half. It was only a last-second touchdown pass by Ben Roethlisberger that won them the game. So, hey, it was a pretty big, pretty big play. I don't know. The Immaculate Reception's been around for 45 years. So, when something's been around that long and it stands the test of time, it takes on legendary status. Harrison's interception has been around for about 9 years, a little bit less than that. Takes a little more time for the legend to grow, The Bobby Thompson, Bill Mazeroski's home run, those sort of things maybe stand the test of time a little bit more than Aaron Boone's home run. Not that Boone's home run is anything but a tremendous baseball moment. It's why he's the Yankees manager. But, it's had 14 years of a legacy. Bobby Thompson, been around for, what is it now? It's 67 years or so. 66 years, I guess. 66 going on 67. So, okay. Still, that was a huge play that Harrison, and he had 16 sacks, was the defensive MVP of the NFL in 2008. I know it was 9 years ago. I've talked about this a lot. I do think Mike Tomlin, the Steelers coach, tends to grease the skids for his veterans. But this was a really short-sighted move, in my opinion. And I'll tell you why. I've been talking a lot about that, but more and more and more people are talking about it. Even Marky Mark, for crying out loud. Not my favorite actor, but nevertheless. Man stole my name, and I don't like his genre of music, and my goodness. The less said about Rockstar, the better. Tri-City Sports Now.
Join the fun January the 20th for a night of cards, crafts, and cocktails.